Hello, and welcome to my first webinar working with eLightment Learning. We are going to talk about mobile learning, and well, I know we've got a pretty good turnout for this. We had quite a few people sign up, and I appreciate you taking the time to come and listen. This is going to be a great opportunity to sit and talk about particularly mobile learning and how that really impacts us all. I want to tell you a little bit, as I said, with eLightment Learning, we do course design. We also do LMS work. And so I just want to give you a little background. If you get some time, go visit our website at elightmentlearning.com. And so I want to jump right into the presentation so we can really get started with it. And this is also, by the way, the first time we're doing this on Google Plus, Google Hangouts along, and we're also broadcasting not only through Google Plus, but as well through YouTube. And so this is a great opportunity, a neat thing to project. We thank Google for their time doing this, and we appreciate them helping us out with this. And so I'm going to pull up the presentation. As you can see here, um, one of the things I did set up here is if you look to the right, you'll see a section for questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them there. I'll address them and make sure that we've got all those taken care of by the time we're done. And so anyway, here we go. Let me pull up our presentation. There we go. Learning everywhere. The idea behind mobile learning is that it is not just sitting at a computer, sitting at a laptop, sitting at a desktop. It is about being able, wherever you are, to be able to pick up and start working on a course. So this is where we're heading. What should you learn from this time together? Um, mobile learning is. The definitions of mobile learning a couple of years ago has really changed since then and expanded. We also are going to take it why it is important and different from other forms of learning. What makes it unusual? And that's some of the pieces we want to talk about. What we're also going to talk about, what are some of the obstacles to implementation? And there'll be some questions there for you. Finally, we're going to talk about how to get started and getting started in working in mobile learning. One of the questions to ask yourself, are you prevented from accessing the internet from your mobile devices at work? This is a valid question. A lot of companies have these blocked. Number of companies for security purposes. While the internet has grown, it's expanded. There are a lot of great things going on there with it. The trade-off is there's a lot more opportunities there to hack systems and to break into systems. And so this is the very first question we want to take a look at: is what access to mobile devices do we have at work? Um, Flip side of that is how many of your networks are available off-site. And so, as companies begin to look at the idea of bring your own devices to be able to access networks from their network off-site, you need to ask yourself before you start venturing into mobile learning and venturing into some of those pieces, what exactly is available to you. What is EM learning, and why would an organization benefit from developing this capability? As I said, e-learning has really evolved over the past couple of years. Initially, the access to a smartphone, access to things like that from the internet made it really helpful for a lot of people. But the problem is that along with that, the technology wasn't there yet. And so the ability to do what I'm doing on a laptop, doing what I'm able to do on a computer, was not capable on a smartphone. And when I talk about a smartphone, I'm talking about the iPhone, Android phones, Windows phones, those type of devices. As well, you take a look at the tablets that are out there, Android tablets, iPads, all of Windows tablets that are out there. And so there's a lot of capabilities now that weren't there before. The ability to run a website from a mobile device, to be able to access course content, in video, all of those things are becoming more and more common. So this is the definition we're working for. Any device that doesn't require you to be locked to a laptop or a computer. And I know even now, as we're talking through this presentation, is that that's even expanding. The ability now is that you can use your phone, use your tablet, and access the content onto a TV, a monitor, using a Chromecast, Amazon Fire, all of those, Fire device, all of those type things that are out there now. So the ability to access this information is much greater than it used to be, and to view it. So the idea, a perfect example, there's a group out of Canada right now that's getting crowdfunding. The idea is that all of your content, your hard drive, so to speak, is stored on a watch, and you're able to access it from your watch, but as well, basically, a monitor the size of your phone, your tablet, your TV, your computer monitor, all of those things basically become just that. They just become monitors. Your actual CPU, your processing, all of that takes place on the watch. And so that creates a whole even greater dynamic of what we're talking about. So we're talking about any device other than a laptop or a desktop unit being a mobile device. Again, it's something you can access from anywhere, something you can access from, sitting in the doctor's office, on a break, in the park, all of those type things. You probably can come up with a number of examples of your own. And so, the ability to broadcast and create mobile courses online are much greater than what they used to be, as I said, even 2 years ago. And so we've got some great opportunities here. Now, I want to stop here before I get too far and make sure there are no questions on here. Again, if you have any questions, you can certainly ask them here. I know also that if you're watching from YouTube, you can actually post your questions there in the comments. I won't be able to access them right now, but I will make sure once this is done that I'll go back and take a look. All right. With that said, why is it important? Well, let's take a look at some of these trends. Let's go back to just 2008 and the mobile traffic as percentage of total internet traffic. Um, this has gone up even since 2014. Matter of fact, Google, their latest statistics say that mobile searching has now surpassed desktop and laptop. That's pretty amazing. That means we're doing more and more on our phones. Um, the ability now to access data from our phones, to access information. Matter of fact, recently Google's put out an announcement that's saying that if your websites were not already mobile friendly, they would actually drop in in Google search and results. And so that's quite a saying that they are even saying at this point that mobile is really taking and surpassing what's going on the desktop or laptop. Trends, tablet shipments. Let's take a look at this here. You see the desktop shipments here. This goes back as far as where are we looking at? 95, 97, and keep going on from there. Um, Up to 2013. And as far as 2013, you're already seeing the drop in desktops and an increase in both notebook PCs and tablets. Take a look at this. Now, there was a spike here around 2012, it looks like, and that was when a number of them were coming out with new tablets, and so you see the purchasing begin to take place, and then it drops back off. However, if we were to pursue this through 2014, 2015, what you would see is this would then take another turn and go back up. And so the idea that tablets are far exceeding, matter of fact, based on the data I've seen, they're even above the notebook PCs now. Um, why is that? Again, data is becoming much more accessible for mobile devices. The idea that you have to store, and I would say this has been a huge help. The cost of data storage has gone down. So what you're beginning to see now is that many organizations are beginning to offer some type of cloud-based storage. This would be your Google Drives, your Office 365. Um, Apple is now even offering storage. Amazon Web Services is an opportunity as well to provide storage. And so a lot of this is going down. The costs are going down, so you're beginning to see it more being offered. And because of that, you're no longer tied to a hard drive or to your desktop because you can log in and check the items from your phone. You can log in and check from another computer. So I would say not only is this causing an increase in the use of mobile device, helping assist with the increase of mobile devices, but as well as also creating less of a need for having one PC or one unit that you're working with. And so this is pretty huge. Again, we're moving to this idea of accessing your information from any device. And so this from a standpoint of a user, that's great because now you don't have to worry about what happens if your computer crashes. You just simply replace it with another unit and you're off and running. Your phone breaks, your tablet breaks, you pick up another one and you're within a few minutes you're up and running again. Um, so this is really you're beginning to see a lot of the less and less of a need for a the old desktop units. Really, for that matter, even the laptops are becoming somewhat obsolete. And so this is pretty good information from a course development side. Now, let's talk about that for a second. From a course development side, what does that mean? Um, it means that the time when you had to make sure you were at a desktop to take a class, the time you were at a laptop, that's no longer necessary. Now you're able to go back and you're able to access it from any device. And so if you're sitting, as I said, sitting in the park, if you're sitting at the library, you're sitting at the doctor's office, you can still access your data and continue the course. Now, that's good in one aspect, and we're going to talk about this more a little bit later. But in a, while that means your data can be accessed at any time, you have to make that a consideration when you're developing your courses because, again, people are not going to may not necessarily be accessing it for long periods of time at one sitting. They may break it up into smaller chunks. Mobile to mobile, global phone, smartphone versus mobile phone users. Now, if you notice at this particular one, and this chart, it's showing that there was a smaller usage of smartphone users. This is now surpassed, and the idea of just the plain mobile phone, the traditional one, has now gone away. I always find this chart particularly because this is if you look at this, this is 2013. And so that was basically only 2 years ago that mobile phone users were surpassing the smartphone users. And so this clearly has shifted, and now you're seeing that the higher mark is in the smartphones. Why is that? They become a lot cheaper now. That at one point, and still to some extent, you've got your high-end phones that are 600, 700, 800 higher. But as well, you've now got this whole market that's begun to develop that is much more cost effective. So the idea of finding a smartphone that's under $200, for example, is very common now. Matter of fact, the new Google, one of the folks that got the Google agreement to do the next Nexus phone, um, is a company out of China, and they're producing a very high-end phone that could cost less than $200. And so this is pretty huge because this means the days of just being able to talk and text on your phone have quickly gone away, and now you see people doing a whole lot more. Online enrollment. Now, this is something I found very interesting with this online enrollment in degree granting post-secondary institutions. Now, this is colleges and universities. Look at the increase in just this period of time. Now, this is only between 2002 and 2011. So this data has actually changed considerably since then and is much higher. So we're seeing a steady increase in the online enrollments. And so with that in mind, that means people are, in addition, they're not just looking to use their smartphones or their online environment for Facebook, email, watching videos. They're now looking to say, okay, well, how can I take my courses? How can I enroll in courses that will allow me that same flexibility? Now I want to stop here at a poll and check one more time for questions. And we're doing really well with that. Great. And so another poll. What is your experience with mobile learning? Some of you folks may say no experience yet, just interested in the topic. And that's great. That's really great. Based on the data, though, and what we're seeing up to this point, is that mobile learning is now becoming more commonplace. The idea that, I should be able to access my courses from a mobile device. I should be able to sit down with a tablet in the evening while watching TV and begin going through a course. Um, those are things that you really need to begin. I would highly recommend researching and looking at the further than what we've talked about here is that mobile learning is already moved into education, into training. Um, and because so if you haven't begun moving that direction, you're kind of already running behind the curve. Very little experience, but considering it for my team. Uh, Definitely great as well, but again, keep in mind, if you're at this B level, your level of option, then you're already behind the curve, and there's already a number of people and companies and organizations that are moving into mobile learning. See some experience, and we want to expand use of mobile learning. This is great. If you're in this category, you're in this group, then you're definitely in a good area. Um, I think the key, and we'll talk about some of this as we develop this, is that there are so many tools out there for you now to do this. And I'm not talking the high-end rapid development tools or the proprietary LMSs. A lot of the stuff that's out there right now is free and it is available to you for free. And so it's just a matter of capitalizing on it and learning what those are. Experienced, interested in learning more. If you're already in the mobile learning environment, then that is great because you're moving with the direction of where education's going. And maybe perhaps you're ahead of it to some extent, depending on what you're using at this time. And so this is a really big key. If you're not already at least in these two areas, you're in a catch-up mode, and where you're trying to catch up with what everybody else is doing. Um, a great question. I think all would agree that the world is moving toward mobile learning, and you've good reason to take advantage, but there must be barriers or challenges. What are they? And this is one of the first questions as you begin venturing into mobile learning, whether you're already there and you're talking with a client that you're working with or looking to deliver a class, maybe your company or your organization's investigating the idea of going with mobile learning as an option, maybe to supplement bring your own device type approach to work and things like that. Um, the first thing you need to look at is what are the barriers or what are the challenges that you're going to run into. And so we want to take a very good look at that. Um, Ask yourself before you start, what is your primary mobile device? Is it going to be tablets primarily? Maybe everyone at the office may not all have a smartphone, but they do have a tablet that they're assigned at work. Um, if training, information, performance, or support materials are accessible via your mobile device, would you use them? And this is a good survey question. Would your people actually access them? Because it's great if you put a lot of stuff out there and you've got a lot of training that can be accessible from any device. But if nobody's using it, then it kind of creates a bit of a problem there and create it. You're not burning, doing a lot. You're burning a lot of energy for no reason. What I would venture to add to that is that while they may not be using all of the features now or many of the features, I would certainly build them in because even if they're not available, if you're ahead of the curve, it's much easier to maintain than it is to catch up. And so if there are areas that you say, okay, they may not use them right now, but we know that's coming. Um, when you're using your phone, do you browse the web, play games, watch videos, interact on social media, utilize apps, send texts, send emails, or use maps on your phone? And this is a good question to ask. From the standpoint of the organization you're working with, what are they doing right now on the web? Are they actually surfing the internet? Are they expanding out to playing games or watching videos? One of the nice things I know that I have a Chromecast at home, and we pull up on the somebody will pull up on their phone or tablet a show they want to watch, and we can broadcast it over onto the through the Chromecast onto the TV. That's a great feature to have, and particularly if you're taking an online course and maybe the screen is just too small for you, then you can send it that Chromecast and watch it on the TV on a much bigger screen. Um, Social media, are they interacting online, say through social media? Are they just utilizing certain apps? Texting, emails, look at some of the, but I guess the key is look at what are your people currently using it for? Um, Would you like to receive ahead of time training, contact with colleagues, and take along handouts? You know, one of the things that amazes me is how many, and my kids go to school here in the area as well, and they've got the full Google platform for education, and yet you still have teachers that are giving out handouts. You still got teachers that are doing written tests, paper tests, and it's like when you've got all these features, why are you still holding back and going through other things? Look at what your people at work would like to be able to do from a training standpoint. Maybe instead of, maybe they're not quite ready to take the full step into online or mobile learning, but it would be nice to be able to send out the handouts well ahead of the class, or maybe there are materials the instructor has that would like he or she would like to send out before the class. Um, Things like that, that if you can look at and get out to your students ahead of time, that's a huge resource when you get into the class because now I'm not worrying about handing out all that information when I get there. I'm making sure everybody gets a copy. One of the couple of times when I've done presentations, one of the things I've done is put a web link at scan box up by each door. Those that are using smartphones or tablets can go by, scan the barcode or scan the code, and it will bring up the PowerPoint presentation with my notes and everything that I'm using. And so from that standpoint, they can actually do it themselves. They can save it to their drive, and they can put their own notes in there. And so they can and if they want to, say maybe they want to reorganize those notes, they can do it later. Um, one of the questions I get, well, what if they take your PowerPoint and start using it? And I said, well, honestly, even if I give them a paper copy, someone can reproduce it. And, give it, if somebody wants to bad enough, they're going to find a way. It's irrelevant whether they have, they can view it on their computer or something else. Um, so take a look at as an option. How can you leverage the technology you've currently got to maybe begin working towards something that's more mobile? What apps do you use the most? Ask your folks that. What are they typically using when they're on their phone? Is it Facebook? If it's Facebook, then there's a need within your organization. Maybe they're looking for ways to connect and interact. There are options to do that. Do you have a tablet? Is that something that your folks can use? Is that something issued by work? Are there smartphones issued by your company or organization that could be utilized? And so those are things to consider. Content strategy. Our content strategy that we're working from here is how do we begin moving from the desktop unit here to the laptop, to the tablet, to the phone. The idea is that we want to encompass all four of these through our learning with our learning content. We want to make sure that whether I'm looking at my course on a smartphone versus a desktop laptop, I'm seeing the same thing and I'm able to interact with it the same way. And that's key because you want them to be able to interact just as well on a smartphone device as they would on the desktop. Content modes. What are you looking to do in a content mode? And the one thing I want to check here is check our questions, make sure we're still running pretty good. Okay. From a content mode perspective, what are you typically looking to do with your training? Are you going to be converting content? Are you looking at business processes and how to improve processes? What are some things that we're looking to try to do from training? Maybe we're looking to make, I don't know, production a little more efficient. What are some things we can do from training from that? And as well, what's some uniquely mobile content that we can work with? A lot of folks say they work with it from the desk that do development in this, so they'll begin with a desktop, do all the development there, then convert that to mobile. I would suggest you reverse that. Begin with mobile in mind. Begin with that in mind because that's going to be the one, if you meet the mobile device, then it will work backwards well into the other ones, desktop, laptop, and tablet. But if you begin with a smartphone in mind and being able to deliver the content through it, then it becomes much easier. The development process becomes much easier. Social and user-generated content. Are you looking for something from a content perspective that people can submit their own? Perhaps you're looking at a best practices approach or maybe a leadership approach that you can use. And those are some things that you may want to consider with your content development. How should organizations get started with M-learning? And this is the question in everybody's mind. Okay, maybe you haven't addressed it yet. Maybe you're looking to improve it. Where do I start and how do I begin? Leverage your existing content. Look what do you have already out there in training content. Um, don't don't drive yourself to begin everything from a ground up build. In many cases, you're going to find that you may not need to. And so look at what's on your current learning management system if you're already doing some online training. One of the things I tell when I work with clients that are dealing with online training and particularly as well as with mobile training is walk me through your typical class if you're going from instructor led to online. And one of the things I like to look for is what are they doing in the class that makes it interesting? And by doing that, what begins to happen is we begin to get an idea of how this online class should be delivered. I always tell people starting out, particularly when they're teaching online, that they really don't look at this as two apples and oranges in the sense of classroom versus online. Look at it as just a different classroom. And much like with any new classroom you come into, you want to familiarize yourself with the tools that are available to you. You want to familiarize yourself with, the layout of the room. And the same thing applies to online. And so look at what you've got, look at the content you're using in a traditional classroom. And from there, you can begin to build out and say, okay, how can I do this in an online environment? So maybe you have a class, to give you an example. Maybe you have a class and you really like discussion. You like to ask the open-ended questions and get the feedback and engage with their answers and things like that. And there are ways to do that online. Maybe you do that through something like this, through a Google Hangouts. Maybe you do it through, maybe something like a forum. There are a number of chat room is an option. There are a number of ways you can do that. And so really try to look for what goes on in the traditional, the instructor led. What are the pieces that really work well and have been successful in that classroom, and how can I apply those in the online environment? And so that's a big piece of it. And I think as you begin to do that and you begin to work through some of those pieces, then you begin to see your online class begin to develop. And again, when I say online right now, remember what I said earlier, we're starting with a mobile device first and working back to the desktop. Build a prototype. And this is a really big one, particularly starting out. Um, you see folks all the time begin to let's just put it together in the learning management system. Let's put it together on the website, and we're off and running, and hope for the best. Um, if you were building a car, a new style of car, would you put it all together, jump behind the wheel, take off, and hope for the best? No, you wouldn't. You would want to prototype it. You'd want to test it, begin to see what works, begin to see. And this is a big piece of it. A lot of people tend to forget this. If you're in the instructional design process, this begins using the ADDIE model. This begins in the design phase. It's always in the back of your mind in development, but where it really becomes big is in the implementation. And there's where you begin to look at and say, okay, here's how we can make it work. What pieces are going to work? You definitely want to do this in a test environment, not in a live environment, because students, particularly if they're new to online learning, are going to struggle begin with. If there are problems, there are hiccups, there are issues that occur in the process, that just it multiplies that fear factor. And so you want the first experience to be a very good experience for students, something they enjoy, something they get excited about, something they can say they couldn't get through an instructor-led class. And so as you do that, and as you begin to look at your mobile learning, begin to prototype initially. because some of the things you'll find, some of the issues you'll find is things that look great on the laptop or desktop screen may not show up very well, look very nice on a mobile device or a tablet. So you want to test some of those things. You want to see, can the students engage as they can with a desktop. For example, with a desktop, I've got a mouse and a keyboard. Work makes it very easy for me to engage. On a smartphone, it's all touchscreen. Tablet, it's all touchscreen. And so, can I still engage with the class as I would anywhere else with a desktop? Run a pilot test. Again, we're in that implementation stage. How can I how can I find out what works, what doesn't work? Now, we're looking from a learning perspective. We're dealing in a different classroom because we're no longer instructor led, but we're on a mobile device. But what we want to do is we want to run some tests with some live students. Typically, the way I'll run a pilot, I'll run 3 pilots. One, I'll teach the class with the instructors as the students, the potential instructors as the students. The second time I run the pilot, I will run it with the instructors teaching it, and I'm the student. The third pilot is we're actually bringing in hand-picked students, students that we know. We may say, hey, this is supposed to be an entry-level class. Everybody's got to take it. Let's find people who have trouble with technology and put them through the class. And these are ways you can really begin to find any problems you may have. Because if I go through a pilot of a class I created, I know where everything is, so I can move through it. The instructors that will be teaching the class, the same situation. While they may not know all the specifics of what I put into the class, they're going to pretty much have a good idea of the flow. And so they can maneuver. But putting in a student who's never been through the course, who may have some technology concerns or fears, and that's really what it is fears, and see how they perform in the class gives you a lot of really good information. Second piece is that you can really begin to test the outcomes. Are they focusing on the learning where they're learning the material? Are they able to accomplish educationally what you're wanting them to do, or are they spending all their time focused on the content, trying to navigate the system? And one thing I do tell people, the tendency, particularly with learning management systems, whether you're talking Moodle, Plateau, Advanced 360, Blackboard, uh, there's opportunity to put a lot of stuff in the class and put a lot of learning materials in the class. Um, that said, too much information, too much content put into a class can create overload, and particularly if it's content that's hard to navigate through and find. You don't want to overload your class site with so much content that it just completely overloads, just overwhelms the student. Um, if you do have a lot of content, try to make it very easy to navigate through and move from one point to the next. I tell people keep it very simple. Keep it very simple for students. They need to focus on the learning, not on the how to get to the learning. And so this is very important. This is really key to keep in mind, as well as the simplicity. It has to be simple to navigate. If it isn't, then and keep in mind, working with a smartphone or tablet, they're touching the screen, and that's how they're navigating about. So that has to be a factor to consider. Update, create more content. Okay. Once we've taken our existing content, we've converted it for a mobile learning environment. We're now going to move to we're going to begin to update and create new content. Now, one of the things I suggest if you're working off a particular learning platform is that you want to make sure there's some consistencies. And so I take Class A from you and I get used to the format, I get used to the layout, I get used to where everything is. And I enjoy it. It works well for me. It may take me a little while at the beginning to get used to that, the lay of the land, so to speak. But once I get used to it, I'm good to go. I take Class B from you. Somebody completely different has done a completely different turn on the class, has changed everything around, moved it around. Guess what's going to happen is I've now got to relearn the lay of the land of the classroom. And so create some consistencies within your classes. I call them basically standardize them. And so that whether I'm taking class A, B, C, whatever the case may be. Um, it may be a sustainability class versus a leadership class versus an HR class. The layout and the design overall are the same. And this way, what begins to happen is Class A I take may have taken me a while to get used to things, but I'm getting adjusted and I'm okay once I get used to it. I go to Class B. It's the same format, same layout. Okay, great. Now I can focus less time on getting used to the lay of the land. I can focus more on the content. By the time I get to Class C, I should have and it's the same layout design. I should be pretty much on my way to where I just jump in, start taking my course, and focus on the content, not worry about the layout. What do you see on the horizon for mobile learning? From my perspective, what I see is that obviously it is the direction we're going. My belief is that you're going to see less and less um, of the desktop laptop to take classes and more into the tablet and phone. And what reason I say that is because if you're focusing your energy and your efforts on desktop and laptop, you're basically going to find your student base gradually phase out because they're doing everything else on their phone. They're doing everything else on their tablet. Um, they're not going to jump just for off of those just for a class, then go back to those for their other stuff. If they're using the tablets and phones for all their other work and their class is only accessible through a desktop or laptop, they're more than likely not going to take the class. Um, Now, an example I'll give is a group I've worked with, and what they would do is they had the online class, which was designed for desktop, laptop. They also had a paper copy of the class for those who did not have access to the desktop or laptop. And so the idea was they could be printed off and used. What began to happen was because so many people would rather use their phone or tablet because they were using it for everything else in the company. What began to happen is people were requesting the paper copy so they could view it on their tablet or laptop, or a tablet or a phone, rather than take the online class, which seemingly should have been available on both. So be aware that, if you mobile learning sounds really neat now, and it sounds like a neat concept, but in all reality, I would say in less than a few years, next year to 2 years, you're going to see mobile learning become the standard. And technology is already moving that way. The Everything else on the internet is moving that way, and so learning is just it needs to be there as well. What's next? Next, I am going to um, take questions. We've got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to field a few questions, see what we've got out there, as well, see what your thoughts are. Again, there's a Q&A section posted on here if you're logged into the Hangout. If you're on YouTube, you can post your questions there, and I will take a look as well. I'll try to keep both of them kind of toggled so I can address them. Um, in general, though, what we should have been through is we talked about what mobile learning is, why it's important and different from other forms of learning, what obstacles are in implementation, and how to get started. And so these are the general areas we've looked at. Now I'm going to pull back up here. I'm going to stop my screen sharing and go back to me on here. And let's see, let me close down the PowerPoint and see what we've got on YouTube for questions. As well, if you have any questions, feel free to post those um, on the core site. If not, then you can certainly post them to YouTube, and I will be looking at those as well and see where those are, see how what we get from there. If not, we don't have to address it this go around. Again, once this is done, this will be posted out to YouTube, so you can go back and view it later if you want to. In addition, if there is additional feedback, you can certainly reach out to me and contact me as well. I'll be glad to help you. One of the options, and I did post this on the Hangouts page, is that if you would like a free consultation to sit down and go through your courses, talk about some of the options for you as it relates to mobile learning, we can do that as well. You just simply sign up for an appointment. In addition, there are a number of things I can do to assist you as well. And so I don't see any questions here, which is great. I guess we must have covered everything. Um, Again, we begin looking for mobile learning and where it's going. Uh, if you really focus, some of the key points is to focus mobile first, then go to let that run back to the desktop versus developing on desktop and then having it go to mobile. Um, Looking at what engages your students and your instructor-led and your current online classes, and how can you apply those to the mobile environment? What can you use? What tools can you use? And go from there. And I think you'll find a great deal of success as well. It will be very helpful for your students, and you'll begin to see your students more engaged. Finally, these seem to be successful. We seem to have a great deal of interest in these, and so we will continue to do these. I'll send out notices as we begin to do more of them and let you know, and hopefully see you in a future class. With that in mind, I wish you good luck with your mobile classes and online classes, and if I can be of assistance, don't hesitate to give me a call or reach out to me. Take care and good luck.